Barbecue. Hello and welcome to another Booze, Booze, and Barbecue. This is Andy. Taking second chair for me is Corey Ann. How are you doing?
I'm great. Good to be here.
We're doing this one a little bit off the cuff. We had a chance to talk to Joel from POURnotPOOR podcast about all things beer and economics. We'll get to him in just a few. We are sitting down the Monday before we release this, and we're enjoying a glass of, what do we have here?
We have a 2004 Emerson Avelina Pinot Noir.
This is a beautiful wine.
Yeah, Emerson Vineyard is less than an hour from our house.
This is a nice, dark, rich Pinot. Pinots aren't always that way. Sometimes Pinots are a little bit lightweight. They seem a little bit watered down to me. The flavors can be a little less complex, but this is a very big, bold, jammy Pinot.
It does, and it has a nice spice note, a black pepper finish, so I think this goes really well with Italian food, smoked meatloaf.
Well, you can't go wrong with the smoked meatloaf.
No, you can't go wrong. Even the cats liked it.
Is that one of the meatloafs that was mixed with antelope?
It is.
Nice. That gamey flavor, I'm sure, went really well with this bold red wine.
It does. It really complements that gamey spice and the herbs that we put in the meatloaf. And yeah, it cuts through the smoke.
What herbs did you put in the meatloaf? Because the meatloaf base is antelope and pork.
Mm-hmm. And then I put in salt and pepper, paprika, chili powder, oregano, chopped sun-dried tomatoes. The pan was greased with bacon fat, always, and then smoked for 2 hours. I really wanted to bring out the natural flavors of the meat and the smoke, so I didn't heavily season it.
Yeah, and smoked a little bit heavier, I think. I think we ran at like 275, 300.
Yeah, for at least 2 hours.
Yeah.
So
lots of smoke flavor, and the smoke ring that you get on the meatloaf when you're doing it that way.
Epic.
And that was just on my little offset smoker. I do like doing meatloaf on a grill because I feel like it just, it cooks a little quicker. It's a little hotter. It's got more of a traditional meatloaf consistency to me. When you're doing it more low and slow style, you end up with a little bit firmer, maybe less crumbly meatloaf.
Really?
That's just my feeling. I could be completely off base, but that's just the feeling that I've gotten before from the difference between doing it on the grill versus on the smoker.
I am surprised by that because I prefer the smoked meatloaf, the low and slow. I really do. The first time you made it, I think you did freeform. So it was more of a round bread loaf type of a shape.
Yeah. And I was using glutinous rice flour to hold it together instead of wheat flour.
I just think it's delicious. I really like the smoked, personally. I prefer that. I almost wonder if we could, the next one, do it with bacon.
Oh, like wrap it in bacon?
Mm-hmm.
Or we could do that bacon lattice.
I was going to say that. Great minds think alike. So I really prefer the smoked meatloaf and smoked meatballs. Those are always good. And a red wine goes really, really well with that.
Mm-hmm. I just realized we should have tagged Sean from Try This Dish Radio in what we had for dinner the other night, which was that meatloaf with a red sauce over the top of it.
Oh, his Italian special.
Yeah, is that what he called it?
I think he called it the Italian special. I did that the other night. Yeah. We had a smoked meatball marinara sauce, and I put some of the sauce on top of the meatloaf, and it's delicious. Shout out to Sean, if he's probably listening.
Sean and Derry. Put your marinara sauce, your meaty marinara sauce, on fried eggs. Yes, oh my gosh. I love that meaty marinara sauce over my fried eggs. That marinara sauce over fried eggs done over easy on toast. Ugh, there is no better breakfast.
With bacon on the side.
Bacon on the side, obviously. Well, hey, speaking of Try This Dish Radio, let's not forget that Derry from Try This Dish Radio was at the Texas Super Chef Throwdown this past weekend. She has got tons of amazing photos and video over there on Try This Dish Radio's Facebook page, and I highly recommend that you guys go over and check that out. Very cool people doing very cool things. She was judging for a few of the competitions and looked like a ton of fun. I was very jealous that I wasn't there.
Yeah, this competition is at Pamela Beach Resort and Golf Community, and the winner gets a golden ticket to the World Food Championship in November in Alabama. And we are going to be there in Alabama in November.
You're not excited about that at all?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it looked like she was having a really good time. I'm very impressed with the photos and the videos, and of course, friend of the show and CEO of World Food Championship, Mike McLeod, was there, and he was announcing and helping officiate, and very impressive what those guys are able to do. I mean, this is a very impressive event all the way around. I'm really excited to go and check it out. Yeah, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be able to meet Darian Shawn. We're going to be able to meet Mike McLeod, Mike Callahan, Kevin Sandrich of Barbecue Beat. We're going to be talking to him on the podcast here real soon, so keep an eye out for that.
Going to be hanging with Kim Bannock.
Yes, going to be hanging out with our friend Kim Bannock. So speaking of guests who we adore, let's move on to my interview with Joel from POURnotPOOR. Great guy, had a lot of really great information to give us, and has a really great show. It's very informative. I'm trying to get other people to listen to it if they have any questions about financial things or economics or ways to cut corners and save money. These guys are really on top of it, and they are making a really great show that's very informative.
I really like that the main theme is drink good beer, save lots of money, plan for a future of drinking good beer.
That's right. Let's go ahead and cue Joel up now and hear what he has to say. Hey, Joel, how are you doing?
I'm great, Andy. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. The show, Pour Not Poor, and of course that is POUR, not POOR. And you guys really delve into financial things, how to save money here, how to cut corners there. I really, really like the personal finance episode. That was a great one for me. I liked hearing that one. I also liked listening to your episode about the new phones and how to save yourself some money on the phones. You guys are just kind of a wealth of knowledge. And so I'm dying to know how you got started down this road.
Yeah, so the whole impetus for the podcast was that my best buddy Matt and I, every time we get together, we would always drink some amazing craft beer. That's what we're into. And so we would split something great. And we would talk about money topics that matter to us. So Matt and I are both real estate investors. We both care about, saving and just different ways of thinking about money. And so the podcast was born out of what we did naturally. And then one day Matt was in the shower and said, why don't we have a podcast about this stuff? And so he texted me immediately. We talked about it and quickly kind of hashed out a plan to create this podcast. And it's been so much fun just to create something that, that we already enjoy talking about. And if at the very worst, and nobody listens, except for our moms or something like that, we get together and do what we're going to do anyway, which is drink a beer and talk about different money topics that we care about. So that was the impetus, and it's been a lot of fun.
I heard that. And hey, you are people that people should be listening to, because you've got not only your home, but you also have, 3 rentals. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so actually 4 rentals, and one of them's a duplex, and we actually my wife and I rent out the back of our house at the same time. So it's a lot of tenants to manage.
Listen, man, as a 35-year-old dude, you are kind of living my future goal right now, because obviously real estate's a great place to put your money under the right circumstances, in the right area, when you find the right deal, if you're financially stable enough to do it. But once you get there, it's hard to know how to make that leap. Do you have an episode that people can reference that'll talk a little bit about getting started into real estate?
Yeah, we actually, I believe, off the top of my head, I believe it's episode 4, and we talk about the basics of rental property investing. And just quickly, I'll give a couple quick tips. I would say think about living in a house first, living there for a couple of years, and then renting that house out when you move up to another house. That's how I got started. And then I moved into a third house and rented out my second house. And so, the reason for that is you can get by putting a little bit less money down, and you can get a better mortgage interest rate at the same time. That's one way to get started. But there's a lot more tips in episode number 4 from us, from both Matt and I, who kind of took different routes, but we both got roughly the same amount of properties, and we've been doing it for almost a decade now. So if you're interested in real estate investing, I would say it's in my opinion, it's one of the best, if not the best way to invest your money. That people need a place to live, right? And and it also pays dividends now if you buy wisely. And so, yeah, I think real estate investing's just an awesome thing for a lot of people to consider.
I tell my nephew that quite a bit. He just turned 18, and we had a conversation the other day about house hacking and some of the different things you can do. And, I talked in great length to him about if you are looking to rent a house, look at getting some roommates. And if you can rely on those people, go ahead and try to find some kind of a secured loan. Come and talk to me. I'll try to help you get a loan. But find a way to buy, within certain boundaries. We're not going to go into a college town and pick up the best house on the worst block and all the traditional mistakes that people make. But, if you can find 3 or 4 reliable roommates, boom, you're paying a mortgage instead of a rental.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think house hacking is for younger kids, for someone who's 18, 20, 22. They should really, really, really strongly be thinking about house hacking, because instead of paying rent, you own a place and everyone else pays your mortgage. And if you don't have essentially a rent or mortgage payment because other people are paying it for you, then you can save up all the more quickly. And that's the beautiful thing, right? Every rental house I get just adds to my monthly cash flow, and it just means I can buy another house that more quickly. And every house, it just increases the cash flow. It's this beautiful thing that builds on itself. And so, yeah, the quicker, if you're a young person, I suggest house hacking to most young people that are willing to stay put in an area for more than 5 years, because that is going to build a lot of long-term wealth for you. You don't want to be in and out of properties, every year or two, because the transaction costs are super high. But if you're willing to be put somewhere for a while, then yeah, house hacking is just an amazing way to kind of jumpstart your wealth building.
And I know a lot of people get concerned because the real estate market, we had the big crash here. It's been 10 years ago, but a lot of people are still gun shy from that. But failure is never something that someone wants to experience. But if you are going to experience it, experiencing it young is much easier than experiencing it for our age, for example, right?
Yeah, completely. I think, agreed. No one wants to fail, right? But there's a couple benefits to failing when you're young. The stakes are a lot lower. And the other thing is that you have a lot more time to reap the benefits of that failure, where you actually learn something and make changes in the way you move going forward. I would suggest not going into house hacking blindly. I think there are a lot of resources out there. Go, listen, like I said, episode 4 of our show. There's a bunch of other people writing a lot of good stuff about it. So go into it with your eyes open. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of research that can be done. But then ultimately, it takes taking action. And I think that's the one step, right, where a lot of people just fail. They fail to take action. And so they fail at the potential of building real wealth for themselves, because they are sitting on the sidelines and just not jumping in when they have all the facts. They know what to do. They just need to actually do it. And that's scary sometimes.
And it's such a cliched saying, you miss 100% of the shots you never take, but it is so true.
Oh, yeah. It's completely true. And, I don't recommend Yosemite Sam taking, just shooting all over the place and seeing what bullet lands, right? Like, that's not a good strategy either. There's certainly amount of information. And I think I'm probably more conservative than a lot of the real estate bloggers and influencers out there. I'm definitely a little more conservative, but I think the ultimate conservatism is not taking a risk. Like, that is, you have to take risks in life, right? Like, not taking a risk is a risk in and of itself. And so at times you need to be willing to jump when there's a good deal. You need to know the underlying fundamentals of your own finances. They need to be solid. You need to know the market in which you're buying, the specific area down to street level. I recommend doing your due diligence, right? This isn't shooting from the hip. But there is, right, you have to take the shot at some point. And if you don't, if you're sitting on the sidelines the whole time, well, then opportunities are just going to pass you by.
And now that we're in the age of the internet, there's really no excuse for failure, because there's just so much stuff that you can do. For example, we're looking at Shopify storefronts. We're wanting to do a kitchen gadget one for our other show, Pardon My Fork, available every Friday at 3 p.m. But, there's lots and lots of ways to make money, and not just make money, but save money. And it's always interesting to me listening to your show and hearing the way you save money on the beers that you get. So, having said that, you've got a beer in front of you. why don't you tell us about the deal that you got it for?
Sure. Yeah. And so I will say, I don't always get beer for a deal. Sometimes I pay a lot of money for a beer because that is one of the couple of things in this life that I am willing to spend a lot of money on. There's like travel. There's the kind of like local artists that I'll spend money for real art. And then there's beer. I just care so much about beer that I'm willing to spend $20 for a really good bottle from time to time.
You're a true connoisseur.
Say that again?
You're a true connoisseur.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think too, sometimes like the whole personal finance thing gets skewed where you have to deprive yourself of everything that you love in order to save money for the future. And life has to be a lot of drudgery. And that's terrible, man. We, on our show, we want to make personal finance fun. We want to help people understand and think about, the psychology behind why they save, why they spend, why they make the decisions that they make, and also help them to realize that they can spend money on the things that actually matter to them if they're willing to cut back in the areas that don't. So getting to the beer that I'm drinking tonight, I actually did get a deal on this one. I'm drinking a Sour Saison by Stillwater Artisanal, which is like one of my favorite breweries right now. They've got the coolest cans. It's called Ground Loop. It's such a good beer. It's low ABV. I'm really into low ABV beers right now because I can drink it. And, we're getting older, Andy, right? And so, sometimes like feeling bad the next day if you have 4 or 5 beers. And so I like having, 1 or 2 beers. And if it's low ABV, I can wake up feeling fine the next day. And I'm really digging this one right now.
And it's hard to find a good sessionable beer sometimes. Coors, Bud Light, whatever, those are always going to be sessionable, but they're not always enjoyable. But something like that's a low ABV. You're getting all the flavor, but you don't have to worry about, okay, have I drank too much? Am I going to be in the sugar shock tomorrow? That sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this one, I have got this local bottle shop that I go to all the time where I know the guy that runs the beer section there, and he's got an awesome discount shelf. And sometimes it's, some beers that just didn't sell well, some that aren't very good. But occasionally I'll find something like this on the discount shelf, and it's 50% off what the normal price was. So, sweet deal on this beer. And man, I kind of went back to the discount shelf to pick up a couple more 4-packs because it's just that tasty.
Nicely done, my friend. I need to find a place around here that discounts beer, although I don't know if I'm going to find it. Oregon's kind of the beer mecca right now. I think we've got more breweries than we have people, but we really are.
I think that's close to accurate.
Yeah, we're getting there. This is just, it's a beer destination. There are these full-on beer tours that you can do through Oregon. It's pretty amazing, but that also means that the choices are nearly endless. So you got to be a little careful when you're looking around. Every once in a while, I do find a good deal on something. It's like you said before on your show. You find these dusty bottles and they're just trying to move them because they don't move very well. They're a good beer, but just nobody knows about them,
Yeah, I mean, that's often the case, right? And there's so much competition in the craft beer space right now. There were, just 5-6 years ago, there were 1,000 breweries in this country, and now there's over 6,000. It's just, it's been a boom, right? And so I used to look for beers from other places, like other states and stuff like that. And now there's so many good beers available locally in Georgia where I live that I don't need to find beers outside of the state anymore. It's just really incredible how local craft beer is getting. In Portland and Oregon in general has kind of been that way for a long time. You've had a lot of really good local neighborhood breweries, but the laws in the South have kind of prevent that from happening. And just recently, last year, the laws changed. And so it's just spurring so much competition, so much creativity in the craft beer scene. I feel like we're in the golden age of craft beer right now. So yeah, for a guy like me who's kind of obsessed with it and obsessed with the flavors that can be brought about in beer, and there's a billion flavors that you can make, that you can get out of a beer now. It's crazy. I mean, I feel like I'm living at the height essentially of craft beer. Who knows if it can get any better from here, because it's already pretty amazing.
We'll see. It undoubtedly is going to get better, but it's going to get better in different ways. IPA for how long? It was like drinking a flower, and then after you drank it, your mouth tasted like you'd been chewing on a flower. But now we have these incredible IPAs where they're going a little bit easier on the hops. They're finding hops that aren't quite as strong. All these new strains and types and breeds and hybrids of hops are coming around, and they're bringing us all kinds of different flavors. And that's been fun for me, kind of reintroducing my palate to IPAs, because there for a while, I just stopped drinking them. I just wasn't into them. But now I feel like, okay, I'm looking at these IPAs. The IBUs are getting back down into the 40s and 50s. They're not the 130, stuff like that. So I feel like there's a little bit of a renaissance happening, even with an old school type of beer like that, the IPA, which has been around for generations. But we're going through changes even in that. And I'm excited to see what kind of changes the stouts and the porters go through, and the brown ales too, because I'm a very dark beer person. That's where I like to hang out. And of course, the bigger, the bolder, the chocolatier, the roasty, toastier. Like I'm way into all that. But those larger, more complex flavors really, really do it for me. I'm always looking for a beer that's going to surprise my palate.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. That's originally what I got started on, I think, was big stouts. I love a good stout, especially like a good coffee stout. Oh my goodness. And as it starts to get into the colder months of the year, I feel like a stout on the front porch when it's like a little bit cold outside is kind of the perfect thing. So yeah, I feel like we're totally getting into stout season. When it's summer, I want like a sour beer, or I want a juicy IPA, something like that. But in the winter months, I want like a barley wine or a barrel aged stout or a coffee stout, something like that. That's just, that's so good.
Now you're talking. And hey, I wanted to give you a tip on a bargain beer, by the way. The Sierra Nevada Narwhal Stout. I have been finding those in the bottle for around $2, $3 in the bottle. I don't know if that's something that your local bottle shop can get their hands on, but if they can, check that price out, because that is an amazing imperial stout for a very reasonable price.
You are completely right. I don't know if I've seen it yet this year or not, but Narwhal is one of those I try to get my hands on every year. I think I was surprised the first time I had it, because I like Sierra Nevada beers, but in my opinion, that is probably the best, easily, readily available beer that you can get from Sierra Nevada. Mm-hmm. That Narwhal stout is absolutely delightful.
This past February, I had a Narwhal from 2013, and it had aged beautifully. They bottle condition very, very well.
That is good to know, because I love, I think I've got a few of their Bigfoot barley wines hanging out, and I kind of like to do verticals every once in a while. And I don't know if your listeners are into that or not, but it's kind of fun for beers that do age well. It's kind of fun to hold on to one, 3 years in a row or something like that, and then tap them at the same time and drink them with friends. That is such an enjoyable experience. Just kind of see how the beer's changed over the years, how it's aged since it was bottled. And yeah, I love doing that every once in a while. That's just a kind of a fun event to have.
We like doing that whenever we get people together for a big barbecue at our house, which actually we haven't done in a while. I'm going to have to do that. I've just been cooking on my small, recently I got a char griller Acorn Jr. And I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but it's basically it's a Kamado grill. I don't know if you know what a Kamado is, or a big green egg, or...
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. You know what I'm talking about. This is the small one. It can fit maybe 2.5 steaks or 3 steaks on it. But man, it stays hot forever. You put a third of a chimney of coals in the bottom of that thing, and you close all the dampeners down, and you put like a Boston butt, a pork shoulder or something on there, and it just barely fits, but it will sit in that thing for 10 hours and not lose temperature. It's amazing.
Dude, that sounds amazing. That's completely been on my list to get one of those type of grills at some point, because I would love the idea of just waking up at 6 a.m., tossing a brisket on, and then having a delightful brisket either like that night for dinner or the next day for lunch or something like that. That's on my to-do list. So now you're making my mouth water and making me like I need to pounce on that sooner rather than later.
Well, I don't know how it is in Georgia, but speaking of deal shopping, so some of our listeners may have noticed I had some photos of that Acorn Jr., and then I also had a couple of photos of an Oklahoma Joe Highland, and I'd kind of been keeping my eye on them because our local Walmart was putting all of the summer stuff on clearance, right? And I don't know how it is in Georgia, but when wintertime rolls around here in Oregon, not even wintertime, fall time, it just starts raining and nobody wants to buy this stuff. And so they have to close it out ASAP, and it just goes down and down and down in price. And so I was able to snag that Acorn Jr. for $50, and I was able to snag that Oklahoma Joe Highland for $100. And I am not sure how it works in your neck of the woods, but there are some really great websites to be able to check on closeout prices. Have you ever used sites like BrickSeek or anything like that?
Yeah, I've used it once or twice. I think it's the most fascinating thing that you can, like, they're not going to obviously post those prices online, right? Because it almost devalues the whole item and devalues the brand they're selling. But those, the sites like BrickSeek, you can kind of find specific discounted items in a store near where you live. And so that's cool because, they'll do it in an individual store, but they're not going to do it across like the whole item online. Sites like that are awesome. I don't use it very often, but that's a great technique. So, we'll have to talk about that on the show soon.
I highly recommend it. Again, it seems like it's very regional. You never see those kind of deals in Arizona, Nevada, California, obviously, Texas, that sort of thing. I'll get on some of the BrickSeek Facebook pages and things, and people will complain about that. They'll say, I never see any of these deals on the barbecues. Where are you guys finding them? And it's always, Minnesota, Wyoming, North Dakota, that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a really good resource if you have a Walmart that's local to you, especially one of those super Walmarts. I know everybody's down on Walmart, especially, well, not really these days. I feel like that has taken a little bit of a turn. A few years ago, everybody was really down on Walmart. And that actually made it a great time to find deals at Walmart because it seemed like their sales were down just a little bit.
Yeah, I think Walmart is still, it's obviously one of the biggest retailers in the country, and they have, such a stranglehold on especially the economies of smaller cities, of smaller towns. And I think that Walmart is a great place to shop for a lot of reasons. In my opinion, the reason I stay away from Walmart oftentimes is just because I can't stand the lines. Mm-hmm. It seems like they've got 36 registers and 2 of them are open. And there's 8 people in line, and it just feels like it takes forever. So that's usually and there's not one terribly convenient to my house. That's why I stay away from Walmart. But I think for so many people, I think Walmart has led to amazing competition on price in this country. They've done so much to lower the grocery prices of everyday Americans. And the competition in the grocery sphere in this country has never been stronger. With Aldi opening up stores across the country, we're seeing much lower prices on groceries. Even if you don't shop at an Aldi, but there's one in your neighborhood, you're benefiting because the other grocery stores are getting so scared about Aldi coming in that they're slashing their prices to compete. So it's amazing kind of what's happened with competition in the grocery sphere and when it comes to consumer goods, clothing, all those things. We are so fortunate here in this country that we can save money on those things. At the same time, though, I think it's probably led to an uptick in consumerism, right? It's easier to buy a T-shirt or a shirt or shoes when it's $5, $10, or $20. And so we've got more pairs of shoes and more shirts than we need. So, I would just advise people, just because it's cheap doesn't mean that it's the right thing to buy and that it's actually a good deal for you. So, just be careful not to overconsume and overpurchase because I don't know about you, man. I'd just rather have fewer things that are nicer, and as opposed to just having a closet full of stuff that I rarely use.
It's so true, and it brings us right back around to the whole penny pinching thing, because if you're shopping right locally among your local farmers and your local butchers and your local livestock raisers, you can find good deals. Farm fresh eggs, generally you're going to pay about double. But pork, for example, I got a hog and a half from a 4-H buyback program, and the pork was easily equivalent to the cost of buying it in the supermarket. Easily. And that's one of those ways where not only can you buy something that you know is a much higher quality and was treated much better and you know where it came from, but you're not paying any more for it. And it's just because you took the time to do the research and you found someone that could facilitate the transaction. It's the same way with local CSAs. I don't know if you've ever used a CSA there in Georgia, but we have a ton of those in Oregon. And some specialize in very specific vegetables or fruits. Some do just kind of an overall thing. But if you pick them right and you appreciate what it is that you're getting, you really don't have to increase your grocery cost.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. There's a whole lot of ways to save money on your grocery bill, And actually, that's our most listened to episode at this point, was how to cut your grocery costs like crazy.
Oh,
and
really?
One thing that my co-host Matt does really well is he decides to eat very little meat altogether. And me personally, I'm more of a carnivore. I just really enjoy meat, and it's kind of the main staple in the evenings for our family. But for him, it works to cut it down, and the meat's almost like a side with what they do. There's just so many ways to cut down on your grocery bills and still eat well. And I think even if you spend more on certain items, if it's so much more enjoyable, for instance, like you said, farm fresh eggs, they are so much better than the store-bought eggs. That I would rather pay double and eat those amazing eggs every morning for breakfast. You're still talking about probably like a 45-cent breakfast, right? But it's worth it because they're so much better. So, I think there's just so many ways for us to, if we're just thoughtful about it, if we just put a little bit of effort into it, we can easily cut our grocery bills big time.
Well, you know what? That's a good point, because even though a farm fresh egg is double the price, you're right. It's still only like 40 cents an egg. It's
like one of the cheapest breakfasts you can have, right?
Exactly. It's all about knowing where to cut. It's not always good to just cut all the way across the board. Sometimes you need to know when to pick and choose and know when to pay a little bit more for a higher quality product. That's exactly what I did with the whiskey I'm drinking right now. This is the Four Spirits single malt whiskey. It's not a Scotch, but it is a single malt, and it's not like it's expensive. I went down to the distillery and got this. I believe it was a $45 bottle of whiskey, and it's incredible. And I'm going to take my time drinking it. And when my friends come over, if they want a little bit, I'll give them a little bit, but we're not going to get all hammered off of it, because this is an incredibly complex, beautiful whiskey that you want to savor. And sometimes it's not about just getting the cheapest thing on the shelf. It's about getting something that you can savor that's going to last 5 times longer. Yeah,
most definitely. I love having a good bottle of whiskey in my cabinet, and I've got something cheaper to make an old fashioned with here and there. But every once in a while, when I want to drink it straight, I want a really nice whiskey or a Scotch or something like that. And so I'm happy to spend more, because it's a bottle I buy like once a year. So,
what would be your drink of choice? You lean more just towards whatever beer fits the season, and I appreciate that about you. So I'm not going to pigeonhole you with a beer. Give me your 3 top highlights of boozes you like, though.
Okay, that's a good question. So I would say, probably a really good single malt Scotch, standalone. Totally down with that. If we're talking making a cocktail, I feel like gin and tonic in the full heat of summer down here in Georgia is like the most refreshing thing you could pop. Or a good old fashioned is always just an amazing standby. If I don't want to break out the good whiskey, but I want some of that whiskey flavor, I'll make an old fashioned at home.
Now here's the important part, my friend. You said a good single malt Scotch. What is a good single malt Scotch for you? I'm curious, because I'm going to a Scotch tasting this weekend, and I'm not quite sure how those guys view Scotch, which is a good Scotch, which is a bad Scotch. And so I'm curious where you land. Like, what's a good Scotch for you? Something that you're only going to spend the kind of money that it takes to get a good Scotch maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah, so I would say I've been drinking Talisker Storm lately, which is just, it's so good. It's so good. I really like Lefroy, which is a super peaty Scotch. I'm really into the peaty Scotches. But I will say also, I'm certainly no expert when it comes to Scotch, but I do know that if I go into the liquor store, I'm talking to the guy, I'm talking to the to the guy in the whiskey section, and I'm asking him, what are some of your better peat heavy Scotches? And that's usually what I'm looking for on the shelf.
Got it. So you go the peat heavy.
Yeah, I love that peat, like that peat moss, right? Like that that super smoky kind of vibe. I love that. So yeah, that's usually what I'm looking for.
Nice. I feel like the guys that like a lot of the peat, especially the real heavy smoked peat, there's this tendency to be able to find good whiskeys that you enjoy a little bit more easily, because I have that problem with Scotch. I am not huge on the peat, but that also is what makes it a little bit more difficult for me when I'm looking for bourbons, because sometimes the lines can get crossed a little bit when you're looking like lower middle shelf. And so in my limited Scotch whiskey palette, I do unfortunately have to say I tend towards the much older Scotches. So if I were going to go out and buy one right now, and you just handed me $150 and said, go and get whatever you want, it would definitely have to be an 18-year Glenlivet, because I just feel like it's really mellowed those peat flavors out.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about something like that is that it's super smooth, too, right? Like an 18-year-old Scotch is so smooth, which is, I'm all about that. I will say, too, there's this one distillery in Vermont called Whistle Pig, and I'm not sure if you've ever had anything by them. Their whiskeys are usually pretty expensive, $100, $120 a bottle. But if someone handed me that kind of money, I would probably buy a really old Scotch, like you said, or I'd go get a bottle of Whistle Pig. I've just been so impressed with their whiskeys.
There you go. Now you're talking. All right, let's move on to beers. What are some of the best beers you've had recently?
Oh, man, that's a good question. So, recently I got to try a cherry sour from Casey Brewing and Blending, which is in Colorado. It's like a few hours away from Denver. And I never had anything by them before. I'd always wanted to try it. And the cool thing brewing and blending, because when you're making these beers, it's a blend of beers that are aged different amounts of time. And so to get that taste right, the blending process is actually more intense than the brewing process. A brewery like Casey out of Colorado just really specializes in that. They hit the nail on the head. And so I really enjoyed that beer. I love the complexity you can get out of a beer that is blended together like that and that is aged for a long time. So yeah, if anybody listening has access to Casey beers out there, I would say highly recommend it. For let's say a beer that I had recently that almost everyone has access to, New Belgium Lafayette. That's another sour beer, but it's one that's like readily available at a lot of bottle shops and potentially even in your local grocery store. It's like a sour brown ale, and man, I think that's one of the best beers that New Belgium has ever made, and they're super consistent. It's great every year.
Man, if we ever make our way out to where you guys are at, you and my wife are going to have a ton of fun sipping beers, because she is all about the sours, and I can tell that is the direction you lean as well.
Yeah, most definitely. So Matt and I actually had a discussion, my co-host, recently about what beers we enjoy the most. I think, a good sour beer, especially a fruited sour, that's my all-time favorite. I find myself drinking more than anything that newer kind of style of IPA, like the juicier style of IPA. I feel like I could drink one of those every day. Like I never get tired of that juicy IPA flavor. So another beer that I've really been enjoying, like I've been enjoying the IPAs and Cherry Street in Atlanta. They're just about an hour north of where I am. They make some of the best IPAs in town. And so, if you or any of your listeners are ever in this area, man, I would highly recommend getting something from Cherry Street, because I feel like they're knocking IPAs out of the park right now.
Nice. All right, one more for you. Your favorite kind of barbecue. You're in Georgia. I know you like your barbecue. You just admitted you were a carnivore. Let's hear it, man. Favorite barbecue.
All right, so if you're in Georgia and you only have one barbecue place to visit, there's a couple that I would recommend highly, but the one that I would say you have to go to is Community Q Barbecue in Decatur, Georgia. It's about 15 minutes outside of the city, and their brisket's incredible. Their collard greens I'm a big sides guy, so their collard greens and their mac and cheese, that's kind of the calling card for me there too, is that's why I would choose Community Q over the other places.
Awesome. I'm going to have to look them up. We will have a link to their website and the websites of everything we've talked to on boostboostbbq.com underneath of this episode. Joel, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate you doing it. The podcast, Pour Not Pour, that is POUR, not POOR.com. You can find all of their episodes there, as well as iTunes, Spotify, all the good places. Yes,
most definitely.
Hey, thank you again, and I look forward to having you on again soon, buddy.
Thanks, Andy. It was a blast.
Thank you. Very fun talking to him. And I gotta remind myself once in a while that it's not always about just saving the money. Sometimes you need to be able to splurge on something nice, like, for example, the single malt whiskey that I was talking about, or this fantastic Emerson Vineyards Pinot Noir.
You save money so you can do the things that you enjoy. And as long as you are planning for your future and saving where you can, it's okay to splurge in areas that you value and bring you happiness, because you can't take it with you.
It's very impressive to see, and it's a good reminder for all of us that it's never too early to start, and it's never too late to start. You need to just dive in and get it done. Making that decision that you're going to do something really is the first step. No wishy-washy. You just say, okay, I've looked at all the angles, I've done all the research, I have decided I'm going to do this thing, whether it's starting your own business or going for a higher education degree or purchasing a house or anything in those realms. Making that decision is the first step, and then following through with it.
Tenacity towards a goal is critical. Tenacity is one of my favorite words, and people that work hard and don't give up on something that they value, I really admire those people.
Well, you're going to have a whole lot of admiration for this next fella because he has put a lot of time, energy, sweat, and tears into this car for our Smokin' Deal or Smokin' a Doob segment. Now, this one, I can honestly see it going either way. It's a 1995 lifted Subaru Legacy with a fully rebuilt engine and quite a few modifications. I'm actually pretty impressed with this thing. It does just look like a regular family wagon, except for it's got some big off-roady mud and snow tires on it. And he's got a full skid plate underneath the thing. It's got a tubular bumper, a rebuilt engine. It's probably where a lot of the valuation is coming from because this is a Subaru. It's not the easiest thing. The motor's got to come out, you know. We've got a few pros here. It's got headers on it.
Ooh, he has the title. That's a bonus.
Listen, man, this is the Pacific Northwest. And it's a Subaru, okay? Nobody's going to guarantee that there's a title that comes with a car.
Oh, I'm so excited. It comes with a CD player and a CB radio that works perfectly. Score!
Fresh oil change, nice. Fender flares, ooh. In the cons, he gets bold in the cons. Goes everywhere, and I want a challenge.
Okay, so he says there's a con because there's no carpet, and it came like that, didn't need it, don't care, easy cleaning. I don't see that as con. I see that as a pro. Easy cleaning. Since when are you ever not going to get mud on the inside of the car when you're out doing what this guy is doing?
This is very true. That probably shouldn't be in the con, should it?
No. He has a salvage title due to fender bender.
That shouldn't be too much of a surprise because
it's a Subaru.
230,000 miles in the Pacific Northwest in a Subaru. Yeah, salvage title. I mean, that's pretty par for the course. Now, the thing that we've skipped over. Oh, and it is a finisher from the Gambler 500, which we've already established in a previous episode. That is 500 super hard miles through very off-roady conditions. So you can put finished the Gambler 500 as a pro or a con. All right, here's the real con. $3,500. Now, $3,500 for a 1995 Subaru Legacy. That is a bit much for me.
Okay. I am going to disagree because we've built cars before. We've built engines before. I think $3,500 for that car is a smoking deal.
There you go.
As the wife of a race car driver, car enthusiast, always looking for the next sleeper, $3,500 is a steal.
Well, we've got one vote for a smoking deal and one vote for smoking a doob. We need a tiebreaker, so make sure that you are going on to our Facebook and our Instagram and using hashtag smoking deal or hashtag smoking a doob. We're going to link this up on the Facebook, the Instagram. We'll, of course, have photos and the link underneath of this episode on our website, boostboostbbq.com. And the handle, boostboostbbq, is where you can find the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram. What have you got going on?
Well, we are doing our third episode of Pardon My Fork this week. It's been a really great adventure. It's really taken off.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun doing it. I'm really excited for this next episode, so you guys need to make sure that you're tuning into that. Facebook.com/PardonMyFork, BoostBoostBBQ.com/PardonMyFork, and we will have all of the goods posted up there. Thank you so much, Corianne, for being here.
You're welcome, baby.
And thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. Leave a like and a comment. And hey, share this out if you feel like it. We sure do appreciate it. And we rely on you guys. So thank you so much. And we will see you next time. Boost, Booze and Barbecue.